hot seat is John Ruhlin. John Ruhlin is the world's leading authority in maximizing customer loyalty through radical generosity. He's the founder and author of Giftology. So let me just flash this quickly in front of you. This is the. It's an amazing book. Definitely, it is available, John, in audio as an audio book, as a Kindle, as well as in paperback, so that you can order it from Amazon. So just go on Amazon, type in Giftology, and definitely check this book out. And he has been featured in Fox News, Forbes, Fast Company, and New York Times, while becoming the number one performer out of 1.5 million sales reps for one of the world's most recognizable brands. John developed a system of using generosity to gain access to elite clients and generate thousands of referrals. He and his firm now help automate this process for individuals and organizations like UBS, Raymond James, DR Horton, Keller Williams, the Chicago Cubs, and Caesar's Palace. John and Giftology team can help any individual turn their clients into their own personal sales force to drive exponential growth. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sabir, for having me, man. This is going to be a blast.
I think even in the pre-show in the green room we were having a blast and going like, why aren't we recording this?
Yeah, we missed some gold nuggets there for like 15 minutes, man. We got to.
I think we'll share it with the audience as we go through it. There's plenty of that, so that's I think we'll have a great time. Before I get started, I want to establish you among the audience so that they understand who you are and your background is. Everything from early growth and when you started getting inspired to becoming the top performer out of 1.5 million sales reps. So I want to know about that, and I want to know about where you are. How did you come about this book, as well as the agency that you put behind it, to help brands really utilize customer loyalty and gifting in their culture. So
Yeah.
tell us, who is John?
Who is me? Well, I didn't grow up anywhere near a great metropolis like New York City. I'm a Midwest farm kid at heart. I grew up on 47 acres, one of 6 kids, milking goats every morning. So I was not around nice gifts. I was not around country clubs or cool skyscrapers or pro sports teams. I was like hanging out. I went to school smelling like, goat milk, which is not exactly the sexiest thing in the world. So I learned very early on what I didn't want to do the rest of my life, which was blue collar stuff. I didn't want to, we heat our house with wood. We had a 1 acre garden, like 1 acres of like hoeing corn. Like I was like, I'm done with that. So I was going to go make my mom proud, who was into health and wellness. And I was going to go be a DO or a chiropractor. She was very holistic. And I interned with a company called Cutco, the knife company. Well, I didn't know what Cutco was. And I interned with them. I didn't make a lot for med school, and my buddy who was a seminary was selling these knives and doing really well. He couldn't sell water to somebody in the middle of the desert, so I was like, I could at least get a training. So I go in, I wear my glasses to look smart in the interview. That's how nervous I was, because I had no sales experience. And these knives are like thousands of dollars for a set, like 10 grand for a full set. So my life changed because of my 4th appointment. So I went intern with Cutco. I'm going to go sell these crazy knives. I'm like, I'll give it 4 weeks. And I pitched my girlfriend's dad, which you've never pitched your girlfriend's dad knives. Like, that's a weird conversation. But the reason I pitched him was...
Girlfriend's dad, why don't I sell you some guns? And
yeah, let me sell you some knives or guns. Yeah, exactly. And the reason I pitched him, the law firm, he was a referral deal-making machine, and he was also super generous. So he's always giving, like, he'd buy like a deal on noodles and buy like 40 grand in noodles and give out at church the next Sunday to like 200 people. And as a 20-year-old poor kid, I'm like, 40 grand in noodles? Like, are you crazy? But that's just who he was. Like, he just was a giver by nature. And so I pitched him the knives, thinking maybe all of his clients are insurance companies, financial advisor firms, lumber yards. They're all business owners, million and billion dollar brands. And I'm thinking maybe he'll buy like a hunting knife that's like $300 since they're all into the outdoors. He changed my life forever. He's like, John, I don't want to order 100 of the hunting knives. Could I order 100 of the paring knives? I'm like, Paul, you want to give a bunch of dudes that are running $1 million companies like a kitchen tool? Why? And he said, John, the reason I have referrals and deal flow and access and all these other things, all these outcomes that we want in business, I found out a simple truth. And that was, if you take care of the family in business, everything else seems to take care of itself. So that was the aha moment. I'm 20 years old. I look at Paul, he's 60. And I'm like, I want to be Paul someday. I want to have a great business and great relationships. I want referrals coming out of my ears. I don't want to be poor anymore, but I want to do it the right way. And so I started to model what he was doing, and I started to land pro sports teams as clients. I started to get referred into like country club circles. And so I put med school on hold, and I was like, nobody's teaching people how to do this. Like, there's swag companies and trinket companies and promotional products to the billions, but nobody's teaching people how to use generosity and gratitude as a way to really drive revenue. Because at the end of the day, all we care about in business is relationships, master relationship builder. And so by the time I was a senior in college, it's now going on 2 million sales reps. We became number one in the history of Cutco out of 70 years. And so we own this agency now, but it all starts back to the, milking goats on the farm and not wanting to be poor anymore.
So I think gifting and generosity, most businesses, when they think about giveaways, right? When they do their giveaways, right? What is it typically? It's a pen, it's a t-shirt, it's a hat, right?
Yeah.
And when do you typically wear somebody else's t-shirt as a logo on you? When you're working in the yard, right? You don't want to ruin your good clothes. You wear those t-shirts typically, right?
Yeah.
But compared to that, when you are, what you relate here with the noodles, that $40,000 probably is a gigantic investment for that gentleman in his 60s, right? That 40,000 may have translated to $4 million or $40 million, right?
Yeah.
You can't measure that, because you're making that person's, whoever you're giving it to, you're making their family feel amazing, because wow, it's free noodles. It's free noodles,
Yeah. Well, it wasn't like one bag, right? Like, he's given like a year's supply, like a case.
Yeah.
And he's not, like right now everybody thinks oh, John, you got to be really busy with your agency. Like, the companies that are hiring you to do all these love bombs to everybody, like, you're probably slammed. And I'm like, actually, the reason I'm doing media stuff in December is we don't allow our clients to send gifts to employees or customers or investors or mentors between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Why? Because you're showing up at a time when everybody's doing it out of expectation and obligation. So Christmas is the worst time on the planet to show gratitude, because you're doing it because you have to, and you're competing with 100 other things on the conference table that's ready to collapse, from the peanuts and walnuts and wine and bourbon and all the sausages and fruit baskets. Do you want to be one of 100 things sitting on the table that people are re-gifting before they even think about it? No. In business, in every other part of our business, we want to drive and be memorable and unique and different. And people in business, when it comes to gratitude, they're sheep. They follow the exact same playbook as everybody else. They do anniversaries, birthdays, and Christmas. They go out to a conference and you get your swag bag. Like, nobody feels emotional and special and loyal when you're giving crappy stuff from China with your logo on it. But if you start showing up for relationships that, like Paul, even silly things like noodles, but he did it in the middle of April. Who gives gifts in April? Nobody. And so, like, I learned so much from this lawyer, like, he was a good lawyer, but the reason he had like 30 years worth of referrals and more business and revenue than he could handle was how he showed up for relationships. And that's something that, whether you're a sales rep or a secretary or a CEO, every business rises and falls based upon, do people like, trust, and are you top of mind with those relationships? So it was like a master class I got my first 3 years of being in business, just watching and hanging out with Paul.
So actually, there's something that you just said, and I want to pick on it a little bit, right? Most people want to target businesses, right? But to me, whether you're running a B2B organization, meaning that you're selling to other businesses as a business, or you're selling to consumers as a business, at the end of the day, it's human to human, right? It's a human being doing something with another human being. But your traditional marketers would focus on, we should target this range of companies and these types of titles, right? Not
Yes.
not people, not John. John working at ABC company. This is who he is. This is his background. Let me do something nice for John specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. The humanity has been lost. Like people are like, well, it's cheaper to send an email. Like why would you pay to, have a handwritten note go out? Or why would you take the time yourself to handwrite a note? And it's like even if you're giving a Rolex to somebody, oftentimes you're giving it to somebody that could go buy 100 Rolexes. Oftentimes the handwritten note is what provides the meaning and the thoughtfulness and the context. So the note is more valuable than the thing. Because at the end of the day, nobody, at least in North America, really a lot of advanced societies, nobody needs more stuff. Like nobody's like, man, I really need more stuff in my house. Most people, all of that logoed stuff and even really anything, like during COVID, what had happened? Like Goodwill had a mile long of people getting rid of all the crap that was in their closets and in their office that they really didn't care. There's no meaning and attachment to it. And so when you can start to understand that, like you're dealing with another, whether you're sending something to one person or 10,000 people, they're all humans. And Paul got this in spades and realized, like a lot of times, some of his biggest deals came not just because he engaged with the CEO or the VP of sales or marketing or CMO. Oftentimes it was the junior varsity person. It was like the junior level marketing person, or it was the receptionist or the assistant or the chief of staff. And I also saw him understand that like a lot of the executives were married. And if you would take care of the spouse, the significant other, and make them the hero, now you have an internal sales rep with that customer or that employee where the spouse loves the brand, loves the company, and they're advocating. So now you have an inside sales force in the person's home, whether it's one person or 10,000, or you connect with like, I spouse, it's their kids, and it's their pets. If you can take care of somebody's inner circle, that's why 80% of the things that we do are like home centric or kitchen centric or things that are people like, what does that have to do with business or e-com? Or I'm like, every human in 2022, where do you bring your most valuable relationships, your family, your friends, your closest clients? You invite them to your home and you break bread. Now, you might not during COVID, but you wanted to, and you long for that connection. And so I got so much, like Paul just understood how humans are wired and understood, it doesn't matter if you're in Idaho or Africa, we're wired a certain way as humans. And if you can tap into that and do it genuinely and not in a manipulative key, because a lot of times, people will give something and then there's strings attached. That wasn't a gift. That was manipulation. And there's all of these nuances.
Or a promotion.
Like, John, I did Giftology. Yeah, that's a promote. Yeah, if you put your logo on something, like, would you ever go to your best friend's wedding and on the beautiful Tiffany's vase, compliments of Remax or compliments of VaynerMedia? Hell no, nobody would. You would never do that. That was the cheapest, that's the cheesiest, tackiest thing in the world. But we do it in business and call it branding and marketing. It's neither. Now, there's nothing wrong with promotional products, but understand, nobody's weeping and crying when they get your polo shirt or vest with some basketball-sized logo on it. So understanding the nuances of what makes something a gift or not, what really connects with a human, what really doesn't. That's why it's not just the stuff, it's who. Like, you got to start with the who you're sending it to, not the what you're sending. That's like the seventh step in the process.
Yeah, actually, it's one of the things that I did when I launched this business. Helping other companies grow and scale. I launched it actually. My timing is always impeccable with launching companies. I launched Growth by Sabir in the second week of March of 2020. Do you know what happened? It was perfect timing, and the show. I launched it at that time. So, however, one of my earliest clients was, thanks to the kind of the network I have, one of my first clients was Magnolia Bakery. They're well-known, iconic restaurant, but because of because of pandemic and lockdowns, they were affected. They had to furlough employees and stuff like that. Everybody was doing that at that time.
Yeah, of course.
But it gave a, because there was some venture capital involved in there, they put me in touch. They knew who I was. I evaluated what needed to be done, and we kind of tripled down on making Magnolia Bakery available to anyone in the United States. Which in the past it was only in New York. If you showed up in New York, you would go to one of their stores and buy, right? not that you could be in Kansas City or Utah or California or some other places that where Magnolia Bakery doesn't exist. So I helped them with that. So brought e-commerce to Magnolia Bakery, and we were delivering banana pudding throughout the United States, and it became a gigantic channel for them. Because it's a gigantic opportunity to bring more audiences in, people who know it through movies and culture and all of that kind of stuff. What I did with that, first I created that to actually do the delivery system of Magnolia Bakery, and in the first year of my business, I was doing it even very recently, also up to maybe even last year I did it. Anyone that interacted with me with my business, with my show, with anything, whether they were a vendor, they were a client, they were guests on my show, it didn't matter. As soon as they interacted with me and we did something, we were doing something with them, right? I would surprise them. I go like, "Can you give me your home address? I want to send you something," right? And they will go like, they would expect me to send them, I don't know, the usuals, like wear a T-shirt that says "Growth by Sabir." No, I actually placed an order on Magnolia Bakery for Magnolia Bakery to ship them banana pudding and like all different flavors to them. So when they received, I would actually warn them. I said, "I'm sending you a surprise, but make sure somebody's home and unpack it, remove the stuff and put it in the fridge immediately because it's going to go bad. So don't let it sit outside, And I was doing that. People I sent it to, they didn't thank me, right? Their wives and kids were like sending me photos and thanking me and stuff. And some of those people were celebrities that I introduced them to. Like they probably had Magnolia Bakery in New York, but they never had it like where they were, and they missed it for such a long time. I have had
there's a nostalgia attached to that.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's how you made them feel. It's how you make them feel about whatever they're doing with you. It doesn't matter, right? It was not my T-shirt. It was not something that would help me promote me or whatever. I sent them something nice for them to enjoy with their family, and I sent enough so that it doesn't matter how big your family is. It was six canisters of banana pudding to them.
Yeah, I love it. Well, anytime you can tie to somebody's spouse and kids and pets, like, I mean, it's game over, right? I mean, that's because oftentimes the executive gets treated like royalty. You stay first class, the Ritz. When you travel, it's like you're going to Pebble Beach or wherever. But a lot of times, these people around the people aren't included in any of that. So if you can light up somebody, like I got 4 girls. If my 4 girls like you, then I'm going to like you, right? Like just naturally. And if they're talking about you, I'm thinking about you. And so anytime you can tie things to people around the people, it's grand slam. Well done, Sabir.
Yeah, definitely. It's also the reason I was doing it at that time. I had not read your book, right? This was something because just culturally, I'm a New Yorker, but culturally, I'm Turkish, and Turkish people are known for their hospitality and giving gifts. Well known around the world. So I implemented that part of my culture in my business. So that I said, you know what? Anytime I do any of these kind of things, this is what I'll do. Yeah. I think,
That's
John,
awesome.
you're
okay. Makes so much sense.
It
makes so much sense. It's
because
hospitality. Everything comes to hospitality.
Yep. If you think about the traditional marketers, right? They go through their training, they learn about promotions, incentives. I'm going to throw a lot of words here, right? Promotions, incentives, giveaways, contests, gifts. Because even Lancome, as a brand, my wife loves Lancome, so it says free tote bag with all the makeup you ever want with every $50 purchase, right? They run it once a year or something like that. She always gets it. When you think about those kind of things, and you learn those things in your marketing class when you go to business school, or if you didn't go to business school, you're learning it from articles and blog articles and YouTube videos and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
What are the differences between those things and what you do with gifting?
Yeah. Well, I think that almost all of gifting is done at transactional times, and it makes it not a gift. right? So if you close on a home and you get a gift basket, and you spend $1 million on the home and you get some basket for $200, you're in your head, you're thinking that person, the person who's the realtor or the loan officer, like they just made like 40 grand and they're giving me $200 gift. Like it just doesn't feel good, right? Now they might say thank you out of gift guilt or obligation or politeness, but it's very transactional. If somebody gives you a referral and you give a gift of $500 bottle of wine, there's nothing wrong with it, but you're kind of turning that relationship and referral into a do this, get this. Same with
Okay, John, I'm going to stop you for 2 seconds because in your bio, I read Keller Williams, right? Is one of your clients?
Yes.
I'm a client of Keller Williams. I'm selling my house and they are my agent. So it's good that you're mentioning this. Take a clip of this part of the video and send it to them because they will be earning a commission from my sale. And I'm expecting not $200 gift basket.
So we work with certain people at Keller, not everybody. So I can't speak for your realtor or your experience. But what I can say is when somebody's doing something in real estate, there's expected times, referrals, expected times, anniversaries, birthdays, Christmas, expected times. There's nothing wrong with that. That can drive revenue. I like to call something return on relationship. If I get somebody like you or Gary Vee or James Orsini or Andrea Sullivan, and name somebody that's a high level person that's making 6, 7, 8, 9 figures. You can buy whatever you want. You might be motivated to buy something to get a free gift, but you're not like moved emotionally at the heart level. And so what we're talking about is making deposits in the relationship versus being transactional, which is almost everybody else is doing something that's do this to get this. And what they're missing out on is if you can show up at an unexpected time as the Ritz, I didn't invent this, the Ritz-Carlton, surprise and delight. There's a surprise and a delight. So it's when you go to the Ritz, you're going to pay $500 a night for a room, and they remember that your wife likes a certain kind of chocolate, and that's waiting for you guys in the room. It might cost $5 for the chocolate. Now, they didn't say, come stay at our hotel and we'll do this. We'll get some chocolate. They're saying, I know you, or I care about you, or you matter to me as a relationship. And now all of a sudden that $5 bar of chocolate that your wife loves, now she becomes a salesperson for the brand because she's moved emotionally and feels seen as a VIP and as a person. Now that person could send 100 referrals to you because she's going to tell that experience to all of her friends and family for the next 20 years. She's an unpaid sales rep for the brand. You can get ambassadors. And now most people think they have loyalty if somebody stays a client at the bank, the insurance company, the financial advisor. What they have is passive loyalty. They have somebody that's transactional. They feel good about what's transacting. But when you get somebody that's actively loyal and inspired and feels loved and appreciated with, not just with physical gifts, but the overall experience of surprise and delight. Now, all of a sudden, one person that's actively loyal can dwarf the amount of business that 1,000 loyal but passively loyal relationships. So it's showing up in, so for the real estate transaction, when we work with the home builder, I'm like, if you want to do a closing gift, fine. Wait for a year and send them the big heart bomb 12 months after they've moved into the house. And, we've done knife sets that are personalized with the family name, whatever else. Now they're dropping $1,000 on that gift or $500, whatever it is. But people are calling crying. Why? Because they're like, we thought you forgot about us, Mr. Builder. After we moved into the house, we transacted, we paid the money, you built the house. We were on to building memories in this house. And I get a handwritten note from the owner of the home building company still thinking about me. That same $1,000, if it showed up at transaction time, closing time, it feels very transactional, meaningless. Give to get. You wait 12 months, show up for them powerfully because you wanted to, not because you had to drive the sale. Now all of a sudden, there's fireworks. And that's how, you see these different brands like Taylor Swift showing up at somebody's wedding, unexpected, surprise and delight. Now that story's being told for generations and decades. Why? Because it was a true surprise and delight. It was a gift. And the ripple effects of creating people that are true fans, or you could call them whatever you want, raving fans. Tim Ferriss talks about it. That's the power of dropping heart bombs on a true gift that they don't expect versus a transactional give this or the incentive fair and stick method, which is fine, but that's very incremental. When you can tap into somebody's heart and soul, it sounds woo-woo, but we all know, the Zappos of the world were built on connecting with people's heart and soul, and you get 1,000x return on relationship there, whereas you can never get that in a typical marketing strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also makes definitely makes to me, I'm data oriented, right? So to me, that investment in that relationship, it's definitely worth that investment. Even if that knife set with the example with the Keller Williams, if you're watching, I would love to get a knife set a year from now after you sell my house. I'm putting them on notice. The thing is, when you made them feel a certain way, especially that family, who do you think they'll mention when they say, oh, you just sold your house last year, who did you use? That's always in your circle. That question will always be there. And what do you think that family that received that $1,000 knife set would say? Oh,
Yeah.
I used Keller Williams. They were the nicest people. They took us through every step of the way. Got us the best deal. Blah 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 blah. You already sweetened that deal, and that family is gonna tell 10 other families. So that if you are collecting on average $40,000, that $1,000 that you invested in that family just returned $400,000 in commission.
Yeah, think about that.
ROAS.
Yeah. Return. So what people don't understand is, especially when you can be a physical artifact, you think about your kitchen on your countertop. If there's a block of knives or what, a Vitamix blender, like I love things that sit on the counter that they use every single day, because now even subconsciously or consciously, they see that artifact, that pillar of the relationship. And the hope is, even before somebody asks about the realtor, who did you use? Now the person might be inspired subconsciously or consciously because they're seeing it every single day. Their spouse is seeing it every single day, their family. It becomes a topic of conversation that reminds them to go out of their way. Like we all know when somebody is talking about a band that they love or a concert that they went to or a movie that they love, it's not even, people aren't even waiting to be asked. They're finding ways to talk about the brand. And that's where you get, instead of somebody just being reactionary of like, oh yeah, my realtor was great. It's people looking for an opportunity to say, hey, we just sold our house. The process was amazing, but guess what? And now there's a story to be told over and over and over again that they're looking for a reason to brag about the brand and the company. We all know, like when Lululemon first came out, people were looking for reasons to talk about this crazy athletic leisure company with $60 shirts. Their logo wasn't big. I mean, even their own billion-dollar brand, it was tone on tone, the size of a dime. People were talking about the brand because there was story around it, and that's where people miss out. They miss out on, do I have to do that? No, I chose to do that because I wanted to, as the builder, as the realtor, as the financial advisor, as the Chewy, the e-com company. That they're brilliant at this. They're all about like the surprise and delight with their pets. People treat their pets better than most people treat their kids. If you get somebody to feel like their pet is being treated VIP, you got a client for life, and that person's going to tell that story 100 times.
Yeah, I mean, if you order that dog food with your Chewy order, right? Let's say that's what you ordered, and they throw in some sort of a chew toy or something like that as a surprise and delight for your pet. That dog is a very happy dog, or a cat is a very happy cat. When they receive it, and plus you feel great because they just gave you a toy, and they cared about that order, not and that relationship, and not just charge you for the order and that's it. And all you did was you got this brown box with just the order in it. And now when you find that kind of one company that used to send me weird things, I'll tell you what weird things they were. It's a vitamin company, right? I did not work with them. I just have bought as a consumer, have bought products from them. Company's called iherb.com, IHERB.com, right? They're well known. They've been around for a while. I would get, when I opened up my box, I would get pencil sharpener. What do I do with a pencil sharpener? Well, like they were showing their weirdness, that they were a weird brand, right? I got eraser. One time I got a little just a tiny little notepad with no logo or anything. It's not like they had their logo on it. Just a notepad. It had like 50 pages on it. That's it. It was just thrown in there, and no
Really?
explanation. No explanation. It's just in there. It's just in there. You would open it up, and it's like, it's not like surprise and delight. It's like surprise and weirded out. Go like, what is this?
Yeah.
What does this have to do with vitamins?
We try to be a little bit more intentional with our generosity. I think that's where people are strategic in all parts of their finance and marketing, whatever else. But gifting is one of those things that's like the redheaded stepchild of like, oh yeah, we should probably say thank you. Or if they do send something, it's like, cheap as possible. What's the least I can get away with? It's not best in class, and it has. And if they could flip it, we go against the grain in almost every area. Like if you can't afford an expensive thing, like if they've been thoughtful and said, hey, we know you're going to be measuring your food. You're obviously into health. We got you this really nice scale to measure out your food or your supplements or your whatever. Or, they went all in on a little detail where most people would have had a 10-cent version of it and they give you like a $2 version of it. Now all of a sudden it's like the best little pill holder that you have, or like even something. Hey, if you're taking pills, what else are you doing in the kitchen? You're probably cooking food. So they could have done weird, but intentional weird with like some sort of like ROI attached to it. But I'm not familiar with that brand, but that's interesting. It at least was memorable to you.
Yep. I mean, I still remember it. I think. It has been a while since I've ordered anything from them. So that story is pretty fresh in my mind from maybe 10 years ago or something like that. So that's still sticking in my head. We have used different examples, and I want to throw an example at you, right? And that was one of the guests that actually showed up. I know that gentleman, this gentleman here that I flashed his comment. So he's a well-known colorectal surgeon in Tampa, Florida, right? One of the top guys, in the age group you and I are on, we should know a gentleman like that. So when you, funny in very many different ways.
Yes.
When you look at a business like that, when you look at a surgeon, a private clinic, doctors and stuff like that, how do you handle gifting in that kind of a scenario? Not free colon screening, right?
So a lot of the things that we tie to, whether somebody's selling siding and windows or lumber or colon surgeries, we try to tie back to the fact that they have, they're still people, right? And what's common amongst humans? Well, most people like to travel, or most people spend time with their families, or most people have pets. So people are like, well, I want to tie it to my business. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to tie it to the relationship. You want to take the business out of it. Because a lot of businesses is like, he's not the only colon surgeon in the world. Like, you want to connect, because if somebody likes and trusts you, you got to be best in class at what you do. But a lot of it comes down to the relationship, and that's where you get that loyalty, where people are running through walls for you actively. So even in that case, like, I would tie to, hey, I care about you as a human. I want to keep you around longer because you got people around you. If they got pets, if I'm going to send a pet toy, it's not going to just be a pet toy. It's going to be a dog bowl if it's a dog. And it's going to be personalized with the dog's name on it. I can't tell you the amount of executives that are making 7 figures where if I tie into their pets or their kids with their name of their animal or their son or daughter, and I make them the hero to the people that they care about the most. So even a doctor, chiropractors, people are like, John, what, like Google, when I spoke there, they're like, John, does this work in technology? And I laughed and I said, are there human beings here? And they said, yeah, there's like 80,000 of us. I'm like, well, cool. It works for the employees. It works for your investors. It works for your suppliers. It works for your mentors. It works if you're selling widgets. It works if you're selling consulting. Why? Because at the end of the day, what we're tying to is not the business. It's tied to the simple things in life that a lot of times, that's why the handwritten note, even in 2022, because everything's so different, that one little detail done well on a B2C brand, like that act of writing a note out to every single customer could shift how they feel about the brand. And that's, what's it take? 10 seconds? Silly, but true, because we all want to be treated as an individual.
One of the companies I worked with, this was a long time ago, I would say about now 20 years ago. one of the things that I had implemented in that company, you know how you're familiar with like follow-up emails, right? A welcome
Oh yeah.
series, a post-purchase series, and stuff like that, right? So that I've been doing it for a long time, even before like Klaviyo and Mailchimp existed. Even I've been doing it from the very beginning because it's just helping on building on the relationship. But for this one company, I even went above and beyond that, right? It's no longer just a digital email that you receive, right? Because it tends to be cold when you're doing digital. It doesn't matter how warm of a message you send, it's still cold. So in the warehouse, in the warehouse where you do the order picking and packing, and the box drops, and then you put the packing slip, and then the machine drops, or people drop the different vitamins and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
In that process, we added a computer that saw which order this was that you had placed and what letter you have not received from us. And it was that letter would get actually printed in that series and put inside of that box with a signature, like it felt like it was a handwritten signature. That's an
Yeah.
investment in the infrastructure that I had done there. And every person that received it, they thought that the founder of that company with his wife and kids were in their back of their garage. This was a multi-million dollar company, right? They thought that they were sitting there writing these notes and sending it. So because they called up the 800 number to talk to the founder who had been retired already, to thank them for the handwritten note.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It seems, but the things that don't scale to be really, really impactful at the brands that get that. And if you can bring the level of humanness, and that's why a lot of the categories that we tend to stick with, like I helped somebody send 10,000 knives, which seems really weird, but if it's personalized with a family name versus a logo, if it has a note, if it comes at the time, if it's a best in class Cutco knife or whatever, now all of a sudden, like I could send, but they receive it and they're like, oh my gosh, there's a handwritten note. I didn't do anything to get this. There's not transactional. It's at an unexpected time. So the beauty is there is a way, there is a recipe, and that's really what the Giftology system is thinking through all of the steps so that you can, tie into and make your gratitude land at the level to where somebody's like, oh my gosh, I got to thank the person for the thank you. Like when you get people that take their time and want to reach back out, you're hitting that nerve, that soul level. And that's where people, you talk about clients for life and client experience, all these other things. At the end of the day, like you're just trying to get somebody to step back and be like, wow, I've not felt this way in a long time. And subconsciously, when you do that, like it's just beautiful to watch. It's just a beautiful way to do business because it's fun, right? You're making people smile because most surprises in life suck. Most of the time, it's like a surprise bill, a surprise accident. When a surprise happens and it's a good surprise, people take notice.
So we talked about all these great things and great moments that you're creating. When does gifting fail? Because you have all the best of
Well, I mean,
intentions, right? And then it falls
yeah.
flat on its
So
face.
yeah, I think people enjoy the falling flat in the face more. It's because it's more anime, right? It's like, okay, this sounds all great. Like, what's the risk? Well, the risk is you have the wrong data. Like we had a campaign that went out. In this case, it was knives too, but we sent all these beautiful knife sets out to like these wealthy people in the Pacific Northwest, and we started to get emails and phone calls to the company, and it said, and one of them was the COO of a Fortune 50 company. He said, I'll probably take the meeting if you start engraving my new wife's name pieces. We had engraved ex-wife's names on the knives. There's $1,000, $2,000 gifts that were like horrific, right? I mean, you're like, oh my gosh. But to me, I was like looking for the silver lining. Even in a mess up like that, I was like, you got a response. Like, let's triple down. Let's give them a 3 times nicer gift, a 300% better gift, but with a new wife's name. And that's what we did. And it ended up working out well because they were not expecting that. They're expecting an apology, maybe replace what they got. They sure as heck weren't expecting something bigger. So we had times where it shows up and we didn't realize the company was being investigated for fraud. And so now all of a sudden you have gasoline on the fire. We've had, times where people, they get the gift and they think it's a bribe, or we get the gift and the handwritten note didn't make it in. So they're just getting like a random thing with, kind of like your iHerb thing. So that people are like Googling and trying to figure things out. They feel wigged out, like is somebody stalking me? I've seen where people are getting gifts, they don't have a relationship and they start including somebody's kids, which really feels very stalkerish, where people are like, I don't want to do business. This is too weird. So there is risk involved, right? If you're pushing the envelope and doing something unique and weird and memorable, like out of 100 people, you might have 2 people not resonate with it, or maybe 5 people. And a lot of times people focus on the 5 that are not, it doesn't land with, versus the 95 that are like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. But as humans, we tend to go to the lowest common denominator. And if most people don't have thick skin, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm spending money to piss people off. That's not a good investment. I'm like, you're right. But what about the other 95 that are like forever with you? And so, but there is risk. There's no question.
You mentioned something in there, bribery, right? And I do want to touch on that. Like with public companies, and I have worked for public companies and some private companies that are about to go public too. There's always a policy in the company that says there's a no gifting policy, meaning that especially even with vendors, even when I had to go out to lunch or dinner with vendors, I had to pay for my own portion or pay for the dinner. They could not pay for my dinner, or I mean that's just meal, let alone sending a whole family to Bahamas and Bali or whatever, or sending them gifts and stuff like that. So what are those parameters, and how do you, when people are thinking about gifting in their business, and especially if it's a business to business type of a company, right? They help out other businesses. When does it, how do you figure that out? Like what's allowed and what's not allowed?
Yeah. Well, in general, our sweet spot on the agency side, or for making consulting recommendations to a company, is whatever you would spend to take somebody out to a nice dinner with wine, or ball game tickets at a really nice suite, or round of golf at a really beautiful golf course. Typically, if somebody can accept those things, which is anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s, that's like an acceptable range experientially, and oftentimes it's an acceptable range physically. Now, if you're sending somebody like a $50,000 bass boat or truck or whatever, typically those are not gifts. Now, maybe if it's internal for the employee as an award, or a gift from the board to the chairman or whatever, there's always anomalies and one-offs. But I think most people, $50,000 thing where they think about a gift being a polo shirt with a logo on it, like that to me isn't a gift. Our sweet spot is to be thoughtful. Now, if you can't receive, if somebody can't, like, let's say it's Walmart or somebody, and they're like, you can't even take somebody out for a cup of coffee. My recommendation is to get the nicest paper in the world. Like we have our stationery. I wish I had a piece of it. It's a sheet of steel, and it's literally like a 5x7 of steel, and we write on it with a Sharpie. If you write a really thoughtful handwritten note to somebody on a $10 sheet of steel, they're going to feel appreciation. If you want them to cry and you to cry, there's actually studies on this. Take that and go read it to them in person. Most people, like, their joy and gratitude goes up, and feelings of endorphins, and so does the other person's. And most of the time, one or both of you will cry, because most people aren't used to being seen at that level of like appreciation. Anybody can receive, even the Department of Defense can receive a handwritten note. And so that's the secret sauce. Make it the nicest one, go all in on the handwritten note, and redirect your resources towards taking care of your internal customers, which is your employees, or take care of your mentors or your suppliers. Like one of my early companies I remember meeting, OC Tanner, they're an $800 million, they did like the gold medals for the Olympics back in 2002. I found out they bought more Rolexes than anybody else in the world. And when Rolex came to town, they took them out to dinner. And I said, why? You're buying tens of millions of dollars Rolexes. Why would you take them out to dinner? And they said, John, without our suppliers, we don't have a business. Without Rolex, we don't have a business. And so a lot of times when people start to realize it's not just your customers, most businesses have a lot of relationships around them, advisors, suppliers, their accountant, their lawyers, their consultants. it takes a lot of people to make a business tick. And if you can't give to Walmart or one person or maybe a handful of publicly traded companies, there's probably still 97 other relationships that allow you to have a business that you could be developing a relationship with and deepening that relationship versus just doing the table stakes dinners and rounds of golf that everybody in the same industry also does, by the way. You go to a ball game and there's 20,000 other people there that have access to the same tickets. Is that really deepening the relationship? Maybe a little bit. But if you could show up and make somebody's kid talk about your banana pudding and tell that story a few hundred times, that might cost you less money and actually bear more fruit than just doing the normal table stakes thing. So when people push about bribes, I'm like, we're not talking about bribes. We're talking about thoughtful artifacts at the same level as a dinner, golf, or ball game tickets. 99% of the time, that's the level that we're playing at. And it's so unusual because people are so bad at this that it's that little tiny hinge that can swing a big door and make somebody feel a certain way. And it doesn't make logical sense, but as humans, we don't always follow logic. We follow our emotions and then we justify logically. We know that as marketers, but most of the time we don't tap into somebody's humanity. And so that would be my comment around bribe.
Now, John, you have been doing this for 20 years, right? And
Yeah,
you've
22.
had, congratulations, by the way. That's a long time, right? What are your favorite gifts that you have seen over the years? What are your like top 5 gifts that you have seen over the past 20 years?
Yeah, so the one I used to make fun of the most that became one of my favorites is probably in the top 5 for sure, maybe number 1. And that's, people would say, what's the worst gift you've ever received? And I'd be like, the typical coffee mug, water bottle, or backpack. And then this artist made one for me, and they're a couple $1,000s a piece. They're called artifact mugs. And the reason they're a couple grand is it takes 4 weeks and carves in your life story, faith, family, legacy, tragedy overcome, who mentored you first. It's like a lifetime achievement award in a piece of functional art that most people are drinking coffee or tea. So I didn't realize he reviews and read my book like 10 times. He made one for me and my wife and hand delivered it. It's now like the thing that like even billionaires cry from receiving it. Why? Because it's so personal. It comes in a special wood box with a video from the artist. So artifact mugs and vases. If I'm going to speak on a big stage, I surprise somebody in the audience almost every single time with one of these. It's like an automatic, the audience is crying and an automatic standing ovation. Because people like a mug, most people have a $10 mug. You give somebody one that like encapsulates their life story, that's game over. Still to this day, we tie a lot of things to the kitchen. So the knives are still in the top, whether it's one knife for a couple $100 or a full set for 10 grand. We've even gifted them to Tony Robbins with like 80 of his quotes of wisdom over 40 years in them. And that to me, like it becomes an heirloom. I want heirloom level. I want if somebody's house is on fire, if they're not thinking about grabbing the artifact, then I did something wrong. I like other things. There's a wine tool. A lot of people do like to host in hospitality. But most people have like a $50 or $25 wine tool. There's one that's handmade in Australia called Code 38. And I can carve into the titanium. They're not cheap. They're like $400 to $800. But it's the one that the French Laundry uses to open up like $10,000 bottles of wine. But I can put somebody's autograph carved into the steel. And now every time they open up their $50 bottle of wine or $500 bottle of wine for their life, the person who gave it to them is now a conversation piece as they're celebrating. I love other practical kind of luxuries and artifacts. Anything that can tie it to the kitchen. So there's these cool heirloom level cast iron skillets that are handmade down in Charleston, and it's called Smithy. And they're $150 to $350. So they're not crazy, but we've done in the last, call it 5 years, so much business with them. It's because it's one of those things that you probably would never go buy for yourself, but that you'd love to have. And it's kind of a off the wall, but very practical luxury. So those are some of my favorites personally. If I'm giving out gifts, which this year will be, 750 grand in gifts we send out personally, I would say 400,000 to 500,000 is one of those pieces that I just mentioned. So I eat my own dog food. When I send out gifts, it's following the exact same recipe and playbook as we do for our clients.
A lot of the folks that tune into this show are entrepreneurs, they're founders, they're small business owners, right? I do have a segment of those folks joining in and consuming this content. How small is too small as a business? And given the fact that you have this 20 plus years of really rich experience, can you recommend any kind of shortcuts for them that they can take, or kind of advice that you can give them where they're thinking that, oh, you just mentioned something for $400, I cannot afford to send $400 across 100 customers, right? That's a lot of
Yeah.
investment on my part
Yeah.
as a
So
small business owner, you know.
yeah. So what I would say is, when I started in college, I budgeted $500 a month to do this, and oftentimes it would be sending one or two things out a month. And people, to us as entrepreneurs do this. I'm like, $500 a month as a college kid, $6,000 for the year. Now if you look at like sponsoring one event, or like it's just a redirection of dollars in marketing. Sometimes people push back, crazy. And I'm like, well, you dropped 20 grand over there and 2 grand over here. Like, you hired 2 extra employees, and now you have fixed labor costs for an extra 100 grand, but you don't have that same 100 grand to invest in the 100 customers that allow you to have a business. So a lot of times it's reframing and reshifting to say, this isn't a check the box. But I say is, if you don't have the budget for 100, a lot of times people, it's not 100 relationships they need to take care of. It's 10, it's 5. They don't need an agency to take care of 10 relationships. They just need to be thoughtful and intentional and have a relationship plan and do the math. Like, for our math is 5 to 15% of net profit reinvested back into relationships. That's the math equation. So let's just say a small entrepreneur did $500,000 in business. They profited, 15%. That's, what is that? $75,000. So 10% of that's $7,500. Now, they might have 1,000 people they've engaged with, but whether it's a joint or a referral partner, an advisor, like, most of the time people have these huge numbers, but it's usually a handful of relationships that are making sense. And in my opinion, I would rather go all in on the 10 people that are producing 80% of my leads or revenue or partnership, and go in something really meaningful, really thoughtful. Because most people don't need more things, right? They don't need another trinket. They don't need a koozie or a cooler or whatever. But if you can take those small volume of relationships and go all in on them and not ask for anything, that's the key, is make it a true from me as a human to you as a human. And so whether somebody, has $5,000 a year, $5 a year, like, I have college students reaching out saying, John, how do I use Giftology? And I'm like, take care of your professors. Even if it's not with a gift, handwrite a note on the nicest, letterhead that you have, or, think about how to engage them and their family or whatever else. Like, I've even had college kids that have gotten their first job by going out and following these principles and showing, attention to detail and follow up and handwritten notes and listening to what really interests somebody. So really, to me, Giftology is one of those things that if you're a human and humans matter to you, which is pretty much everybody, then there's a way to apply this even on your own and take the recipe and go run with it.
I'm actually also a college professor at my local college.
I
And
didn't
it's
know that.
interesting you said that, because this is the first semester I was teaching, and none of my students not even in one session brought me an apple. I was like expecting an apple. Like I said, somebody would have a sense of humor of buying an apple and just giving it to me. Well, like, here you go, teach. Here's an apple for you. Just if they had a sense of humor, nobody had that level of sense of humor. They were just, nobody has done that yet. To me, as
It'd
a
be
professor,
memorable.
one, it would be memorable, and I would get a kick out of it, that everything that you think, that cliche that a teacher usually gets an apple from their students, right? If one of them did anything like that, in my class, I would have been blown away, right? I would go like, yeah, this is very funny. I would have enjoyed the apple, but I would have said, this is special for, this is a very special thing. An
Yeah.
apple doesn't cost that much, one apple, but just the aspect of somebody actually doing that, I would have found it extremely funny.
Yeah. It would have been, yeah. It's, I mean, at the end of the day, people are like, John, like, what does all this boil down to? And it's like, it's the thoughtful thought, right? It's when somebody, whether it's your spouse or somebody else, like, the intentionality of saying, I went out of my way and invested time, energy, resources, whatever is to see you. And if anybody like has taught or understands, like, man, that's a yes, maybe you're whatever else, but you're not doing it for the pay, you're the impact. And if somebody made that investment of you and that intentionality, like, gosh, like relationships flourish when people are intentional with their gratitude.
One type of gift I want to talk about, and then I'll talk to you about the ultimate question I'm going to ask you. One scenario that I have been gifted over the years, which was very different. That's why I would like to bring it up. Where a vendor that I was working with sent me a nice postcard, handwritten, and said that, for this holiday season, we have selected these 3 or 4 nonprofits or 5 nonprofits that on your behalf we will be donating XYZ, whether it's planting trees to water wells to whatever, those kinds of things. And so it's like, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I'll share with you how I felt about it, but I would like to hear your thoughts.
So my personal opinion around that, it goes against the grain of what people are expecting, because like generosity is a core value. Right? To me, it can never, in lieu of taking you out to dinner and a ball game, I made a donation to this charity. You'd be like, it's weird, like they don't want to spend time with me. And to me, there's nothing wrong with charity, but most of the time they're giving to a cause that's not important to you. You're giving to a cause important to the company. And it's weird to say, like, to me, it subconsciously, it speaks of being lazy, because it's like, I didn't want to take the time, energy, and resources to appreciate you as a human. I decided to look generous and just say, instead of doing something thoughtful, I'm just going to cut a check to these charities and show. And to me, that doesn't deepen the relationship. That doesn't show like you're treating me like a human. It kind of like, to me, is like a let off the hook. I'm going to do this thing because I really don't want to put energy and effort into showing gratitude. That's, to me, now if you want to give money based upon your business, cool. But that in lieu of showing up for somebody, like going to dinner with somebody or whatever else, to me is just kind of weird and doesn't land, I think, with a lot of people the way that they're hoping it does.
Yeah, I mean,
how did you respond?
100% aligned with you. Exactly. That was my thought process. I would have loved if they had given me like a QR code or a link to say that, oh, just go to this link and choose one of your nonprofits that you believe in, whether it's Red Cross, Diabetes Association, Epilepsy Foundation, whatever it is. It could be something random that I support. I might support dogs with cleft lip, whatever it is. I mean, that's my cause, right? It's great that, having that dinner for, I don't know, $250 or $100 or whatever, right? That's fine, because I'm going to be working with them anyways throughout the year. I would rather give that during the holidays to a cause. To me, that would have been more meaningful. Then I said, okay, you know what? I want to give to this organization. It gives me another opportunity to give. And then they could have supported it through some kind of mechanism. I would have appreciated that. The other part of it, because the thing is, I'm from New York, so all New Yorkers have this thing called bullshit meter, and as soon as I received that, my bullshit meter went, bing, 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 and I'm like, so there are some companies, they have their own foundation. So literally they're taking money from this pocket and putting it into this pocket, right? That's what it felt like to me. Like, it didn't sound authentic. It didn't sound real. It didn't sound like genuine at all. It just felt like, they were taking money from their one pocket to put it into another pocket, basically under the guise of foundation.
Yeah. And think about that. You probably didn't tell them that directly, though, did you?
No, I was just pissed. So
right.
that gift pissed me.
Right.
I got
they invested money to piss you off. And that happens a lot, right? Even if you got a logoed something, people subconsciously will think, gosh, what a bastard. Oh, man, are they seriously think I'm going to go advertise for their brand? All of these things happen. So, like, they're silent. Nobody writes a letter that says, I thought less of you as a company or person based upon how you show gratitude. But there's a lot of that happens at scale based upon how people are showing gratitude and appreciation, whether it's the swag and trinkets or whether it's the chocolate bars with your logo on it or all of those things. And so I challenge people all the time. They're like, oh, people love my gifts. I'm like, really? Let me talk to them. I want to find out the real story. A lot of what's going on in people's heads and hearts is very different than what people think.
So let me ask you the ultimate question I always ask on this show. Given the fact that you have been doing this for 20 years, you have helped tremendous amounts of companies of all different sizes and shapes, and going through all of your favorite gifts and all of that stuff. What is your number one expert insight into gifting in your business to scale your business? Your $100,000 expert insight.
Yeah, I would. My insight is kind of a combination of everything we talked about, but the core of it is if you have a marketing plan, a finance plan, a diet plan, a workout plan, I challenge people to have a relationship plan. Understand who are the people that make your business tick, whether it's one person, 5 people, 5,000 people. Identify, write them down. Maybe in your gratitude journal, you write 3 people down every day. After a year, you got 1,000 people. But understand the who, and then go all in on developing a plan of when you're going to take care of them. When would it be a surprise and delight? How much are you going to invest in them? Don't say what's the least I can get away with. Say what's the most I can afford to invest in those relationships. Go all in. And I challenge people to do this, whether it's 5 or 15% of their profits. Go all in on relationships personally. Make it about them, not about you. That's not a gift. All those parts, you do it for 3 years. The long game is days, or is years and decades, not days. But commit to doing it for 3 years and come back and tell me it doesn't produce at least a 10x over what you invested. I've never had anybody in 22 years that's fully committed to it and went all in on the recipe that doesn't. Holy crap, John, you said 10x, it was actually 30x.
Wow.
Because that's the essence of what we're talking about. Is deposits, it comes back 10 to 100 fold.
John, well said. Thank you for joining us today and being on the show and dropping all of this amazing knowledge related to gifting.
Sabir, thanks for extracting it and inspiring me, man. It's been a lot of fun.
And thank you for the live audience that joined us on the show. And or if you're catching this on a recording, definitely keep on tuning in. We have. With next week's episode, we would have completed 75 episodes of this show. We only do 25 episodes a year. So that's a lot of great content. Definitely check out the other episodes in the past. We do have, for this year, we have one more episode coming up next week. And then after that, we come back in 2023 with a whole new set of guests, amazing guests like John, to share their knowledge and their expertise on the show. Thank you again for joining us.